Hey, welcome to class 5. This class is called Anatomy of the Soul. We're really going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of how we work, how the whole system works. It's fascinating. I think we'll all find it very fascinating. Let's do a super quick review. Okay, so class 1, we established that we translate toiv and good as selfless, and ra and evil as selfish. Okay, and humility is the embodiment of goodness, and arrogance is the embodiment of evil. So as such, this is just so important that arrogance and humility are not traits that we're trying to acquire. That's the foundation of all the traits. That's who we are. They're not just another quality. Okay, then we explained how toiv and ra are irrelevant in regards to describing anything. Toiv and ra is always about the intention that the human being had. No occurrence is good or bad. It just is. The good and bad element is to do with the human element of selfish or selfless imprinted upon it. And we explained that, selflessness is really a kind of silence, an inner silence whereby you can experience another. Because Cole's mum, there's a chatterbox going off in your head when someone's talking. You're not really listening to them. You're listening to your thoughts about them, which is really an experience of yourself. So we're trying to just quieten down that inner noise and to have as few opinions. It's so funny to say this coming from the West. We're trying to have as few opinions as possible. Sometimes you need opinions, yeah, and you have to. But if you can avoid having an opinion on something, or even fight having an opinion on something, that's a very good spiritual practice. Okay. Then we spoke about name and essence. You remember that? Remember we spoke about name is like stuff you've got, and essence is really who you are. We can't really talk about you. That's not. There's nothing to say. That's so sacred that it's not. Whereas all the stuff you've got, your personality and your intelligence and your emotions and your property and all this stuff, yeah, that we can talk about for ages and ages. Yeah. And the goal of having a relationship with somebody is connecting to the person, not the stuff. Everyone looked into their kids' eyes. When I said on Friday night, I said it's a good spiritual practice to look deeply into your children's eyes when you bench them, and you'll see that you are reflected in the pupil of the eye, not in the iris. You'll see yourself in the pupil of the eye. Why? Because that self, the actual person, it's all the same. We're all the same. We're all the same. A person's a person. The name of people vary tremendously. You've got huge names and very small names, but a person's a person. Everyone can be related to on the same level as a person. And then we spoke about the idea of merging. This is also in class 3, about merging with another, which we call identification. We're going to talk about that more today, B'ezrat Hashem. And then we really started getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of creation and how we said Hashem Echad, which we all say every day, Shema Yisrael. But there appears to be at least me and him, and you're probably thinking the same thing as well, yeah, at least when we explain that all of creation is so to speak, like a scratch in the rock. The more something proclaims itself to be, the more, so to speak, Hashem has been removed. But it's not like anything was added to creation. Just like when you scratch your name in the rock, it's not like now there's the rock and something else. There's the rock and the impression of your name, but you didn't actually add anything to the rock. So it's a very important idea to keep that in mind, that all the things of this world are really a revelation of himself. Like the fact that you scratch your name in the rock was the potential to scratch anyone's name. Basically, every single name existed in the rock. You happen to scratch out your name, but you could have scratched out your husband's name, your children's names, any other name. Yeah, so every single thing you see in the world is just a revelation, so to speak, of him himself. Nothing's been added. So that means Hashem Echad. And then we started referring to that phenomenon of the appearance of something else is called klipa and sitra achra. And we explained how Hashem, or anything, is done through ratzon. Yeah. The tools that you use to do X, that's varied. But everything that happens is because you wanted it to happen. And then you used whatever you used to make it happen. So that idea of when you want something to happen and it happens, that's like the idea of a spark of you is causing that thing to be. And that's how it is in creation. So to speak, a spark of the Ribono Shel Olam, that's what when we talk about a spark of Kedusha in something, that's what we're referring to. That little bit of Hashem, his ratzon, that's causing that thing to exist. Okay? And there's things that Hashem wants for their own purpose, for themselves. And there's things that he wants for an ulterior reason, an ulterior motive, like klipa, which gives us the feeling of having our own sense of self, which gives us free will. So he doesn't really want that for itself. He has an alternative, ulterior motive to give us free will. So that's called something that he doesn't, that's a means to an end, as opposed to an end unto itself. Okay? So the answer to the question, we asked the question, why do you want to live? And the answer is, there is no answer to that question. There is no why I want to live. I want to live. I don't have a reason to live. Living isn't a means to an end. Living is an end unto itself. But you know what's really interesting is that's the same answer to why do you want to have children? There's no reason why you want to have children, as we can attest to. I'm just joking. There are reasons, but there's no reason why you want to have children. There's also no reason why you want to get married as well. That's just you. It's like we said. Remember asking the sun, "Why are you shining?" We'd be like, "What are you talking about? Why am I shining? I shine. I'm the sun. That's what I do." Yeah, but why? It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's the same. That's the answer to why do you want to live? Why do you want to get married? Why do you want to have children? Basically, anything that animals do naturally, you don't have a reason for. You might attach reasons to them and think you have reasons for them, but they're well beyond reason. They're well beyond reasons. Okay. Okay, so look, what we're going to try and do now is a very, what's the word? We're going to try and do a lot, a very, not hopeful, what's the word? Hopeful is a good word, but there's a better word. When you take on a big thing to do. Okay, whatever, we're going to try and do it. Okay, the question is, what is a soul? What's a nefesh? Okay, and I know that most people would think, like I always used to have Casper the Ghost, that little, the little white blobby ghost thing. That's, soul's like something like that, like a kind of like cloudy kind of thing, yeah? But a soul that we have passed down, our tradition has passed it down, is an incredibly specific, detailed thing, okay? So a soul, first things first, a soul is not a thing, it's a someone. A soul is a being, not a thing. Okay, the world divides into beings and things, and our goal is to see the being in everything. But souls are very much beings; they're not things. Okay, a soul could be described as a highly ordered energy. Okay, you've got the idea of an energy, just some kind of power. But we're talking about an energy that's been ordered and systemized and structured in a sense. Just like when you've got an idea, it's not a physical thing, but it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. Yeah, that's the same idea as a soul. We're going to explain this. The goal right now is to give a big overview of the soul, and then next class we'll go into more specifics. But you have to know that everything we're talking about here, we could literally speak about for hours, literally. The depth of how much further it goes is amazing. But the goal is to just get a basic a basic picture. Okay, to put it very simply, if you want to just use our very simple 2023 words, is a soul is a wanting, knowing, feeling, behaving being. Wanting, knowing, feeling, and behaving. That's what a soul is. Well, that's really what a soul does. And obviously a soul, a nefesh, doesn't have any physicality to it, but there are degrees in spirituality. Just like, you know, if you were to look at, you know, the Sotmo Rebbe, Zatzal, the old Sotmo Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel, he looked like kind of like very like angel-like, yeah, and like compare him to like Mike Tyson or someone like that. In the physical world, you've got levels of like, he's like just much less of a physical being than like Mike Tyson. You see where I'm from, yeah? That's the people I learned. So this is the idea in spiritual, just like in physicality, you've got levels of physicality. Like you would say that a fine wine is much more refined than Coca-Cola, yeah? But they're both physical. So on the level of spirituality, you have levels of refinement. So spirituality that's very refined, and then you have spirituality that's much less refined. Okay, so I just want to share my screen very quickly. To take notes in this class is a very good idea because we're going to say a lot of interesting things. Does everyone see this little picture? Yeah. So this is what we're going to discuss, the 5 levels, okay? The highest level is going to be called pleasure, oineg. Then ratzon, which is will and desire. These two are usually spoken of together, okay? Then we've got intellect. Then we've got emotions. And then we've got behavior, okay? I'm just going to get that. Okay. So these are basically the 5 levels. And the top 2 levels, like I said, are really one level, but we are going to talk about them separately. But they're really spoken of as one level. Understanding this is like, we're going to understand how we work. How do we work? How does it work? Why do I feel like this when this happens? Or why do I behave like this when that happens? This is going to answer everything if we just put a little bit of thought into it. But this is the system. This is the system. Okay, so we've got oineg, which is the highest level, which we call pleasure. Ratzon, will. Seichel, intellect. Midas is emotions. And levushim is behavior. I know levushim means clothing, but we'll talk about that. Now, this is what you need to have in your mind. Okay, like we said, a soul is not a physical being, obviously, but it has, so to speak, in a spiritual way, and you can think of it like this, it's very helpful. It has a head, it has a body, it has clothes, and it even has a soul. A soul has a soul, and it even has a soul of a soul. So we're thinking now that it really becomes like you look at a person, they are a walking diagram, literally a diagram of what the soul is, literally a diagram, literally. And the biggest trip is that if you learn Kabbalah, you'll see that the form of a human being, male and female together, yeah, is literally it's not just a pitch, it's the diagram of all of creation, literally. It's not even a diagram, it's the reason why we look like we look is because that's how Hashem made creation. It looks like a big man, a woman, together, whatever. But when you should be aware of that, when one of the most amazing things about learning Kabbalah is that you end up looking at a human being and it's like you're looking at the entire plan of all of creation. The eyes, the forehead, the back of the neck, the nose, the mouth, the beard, the shoulders, the hands, the belly button, everything is spoken about, everything in great detail. And it's exactly how he made the world. So your body is actually a diagram of your soul. It's not that it happens to look the same. Your body is a diagram of your soul. So your soul has a head. We call that the intellect. Your soul has a body. We call that the emotions, the midas. Your soul has clothing. Yeah, that's called behavior. And your soul has a soul. That's called Ratzon. And the Ratzon has its own soul. So your soul has a soul of a soul. That's called Oineg, pleasure. Okay. So let's try and understand. So let's start at the beginning. Pleasure. Pleasure is not really the beginning. Pleasure is the essence of your soul. Now, this is a very important idea. When you eat a piece of chocolate, you would say it gives me pleasure. Yeah? Assuming you like chocolate. Yeah? But we're going to scrap that. Chocolate does not give you pleasure. Chocolate touches your pleasure. To say it like this is going to help us understand what pleasure actually is. Pleasure is not something you get from other stuff. Pleasure is the essence of who you are, and it is touched by stuff. Everyone gets the dik there, like it's a little subtle, but it's clear, yeah? Meaning there are certain things, for example, yeah, like my kids like that stuff gala, you know, like the cowfoot jelly gala. It's like, yeah, for me, it makes me feel ill. My kids enjoy it. So for them, it touches their pleasure. For them, it's a, you know, real, wow, we got gala. Yeah? For me, it's like, please keep that away. So there are certain things that touch my children's pleasure and they don't touch my pleasure. And there are klali things in the world that basically give pleasure to everyone. I'm not going to get into pain right now, but the idea of pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain are similar. Well, they're not really similar. They're two sides of the same coin. But the foundation of everything is pleasure. Why? Because, well, let's answer this question. Can anybody answer this question? Why do you like pleasure?
Makes you feel good.
Well, that's pleasure. Why do you like
It connects you. You feel like I don't know, something inside, you know, just makes, I don't know.
The reason why you like pleasure is there's no reason why you like pleasure. Just like why you want to live. From pleasure flows all the reasons why you do everything else. Reason begins much lower down than pleasure. Reason begins in seichel. That's really 2 levels removed. So pleasure. Why do you like pleasure? What are you talking about? I like pleasure. Everyone likes pleasure. There's no reason why you like pleasure. That's an end unto itself. You pursue pleasure as an end unto itself. Everything that you do is for pleasure. It might be quite removed and it might not have any pleasure in it itself, but it's always for pleasure. That's the motor, or to avoid pain. The Madrid.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So we were designed that way? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That's who you are. If you really want to, if somebody says to you, who are you? You would say, I'm pleasure. I mean, they'd think you're mad, but that's what we're going to see now. Pleasure is the essence of who you are. It's what it causes everything, literally everything. Now, pleasure is an end unto itself, meaning it has no reason, and therefore we said it's from pleasure that all the reasons flow. Okay, but this is a very important point. Pleasure itself doesn't really want anything. What we're going to say is very abstract, so try and just kind of feel what I'm saying more than understand what I'm saying. Pleasure has no desire to do anything or go anywhere. It's like sitting in your house, just being in love with life. The kids are gone, everything's clean, and you just get that minute after the whole thing and you sit there and the green, you know, the trees outside the window, you just sit there and you're like, ah. And then the phone rings and they go, and then you get caught up with everything else. Yeah. But that experience of just of being and being content, that's a good moshel for what pleasure is. Pleasure doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to go anywhere. It just wants to be. So now how does it go out and do anything? That's called will. Rutson. Rutson now is the external manifestation, if you want to use a funny word, is the external manifestation of pleasure. Pleasure's just happy being. Rutson now wants to go out and do stuff. You can't really have pleasure without Rutson, but it's the pleasure that energizes the Rutson, the will. Now, Rutson wants more. So Rutson would be like the experience of sitting in your house in a nice, comfortable chair, thinking, I want a more comfortable chair, or I want a more beautiful house, or I want a bigger this. It's pleasure moving out of itself. You hear what I'm saying? It's very abstract. Are you feeling a little bit what I'm saying? Makes a little bit of sense, like on a kind of internal level. Good, because it shouldn't really make much sense on an intellectual level, because this is all beyond intellect. Intellect begins after this. So Rutson now, Rutson is the energy. It is pleasure enclosed in some kind of form. It's become an energy. See, pleasure, even to call pleasure an energy, is a little bit like, because it's not doing, it's just there. It just is. You know what? Sorry?
May I ask you something?
Sure.
So pleasure is being, and Rutson is the channel of how you channel the pleasure?
No, because remember, pleasure doesn't move anywhere. Pleasure goes out.
Taking the next level?
It's
lower?
not. Well, pleasure, this is again, you don't like, I don't know if you heard at the beginning, we said that pleasure is touched. Your pleasure is touched by things. Things don't give you pleasure, they touch your pleasure. So it's the Rutson that your pleasure, so to speak, sends out to have itself touched more, in a sense. It will get a little clearer right now. And we're going to anyway move away from these levels, because these levels are very, very, very abstract. It's going to get much more concrete. But let's just keep going for a minute. That Rutson is basically a chaotic energy. Rutson is an energy. You know, you meet people who just like, when they want something, like everyone's got a kid who, like, I got a kid who anything he wants, he like really wants it, you know? And I got other kids, they want it. You can convince them in a second that they don't want it. But then I've got a kid who's like, if he wants it, it's going to happen within a few moments. Yeah, there's just this kind of, that's the level of Rutson. Rutson's a chaotic energy. Is it good or bad? It's neither. It's just a chaotic energy. It depends where it goes. It doesn't, it's not as Rutson itself, before it goes into what we're going to call Midas and things like that, it doesn't really want anything, it just wants. The question is what's it going to get connected to? What are you going to want? But that power of wanting is going to be, it's just a power, it's just generic power, like electricity. Electricity could, if you plug in your air conditioner, electricity can produce cold air. If you plug in your oven, electricity will produce hot air. If you plug in your car, electricity will cause it to move. So that's the energy. What happens to that energy? Where's it going to go? That's the question. But Rutson is just energy, pure energy. Okay, so you could think of it a little bit like this, like the sun. Yeah, the orb of the sun, the actual round ball of the sun. What energizes that? Where's it getting its energy from? And the answer, OP physics, what I understand is like nuclear fusion going on. It's like, basically, to think of it in this way, it's like stuff going on in a different dimension. Stuff happening in a different dimension that causes the ball of the sun to become the ball of the sun. That's exactly the moshel for Oineg and Ratzon. Oineg is completely otherworldly. It's so far from this world. It's so distant. It's so disembodied, so ethereal, so abstract. It's so spiritual. Yeah. Ratzon is that energy that's not even called an energy. It's just the next stage where it becomes this powerful, powerful energy. You hear the thing? Do you get the idea a bit? Bit? No? A little bit? Okay. So now, how do we harness Ratzon? Like we said, Ratzon is just like chashmal, just electricity. It's like lightning. You want to try and lightning just smashing around everywhere. The chances are it's going to be very distracting. They're very destructive. How do you harness that? How do we harness Ratzon? Any ideas?
Actions.
Not a bad guess, and in like a sense, it's kind of right, but there's a much more like normative answer.
With our intellect?
Yes, that is what our intellect does. Our intellect is masader. Our intellect organizes. Intellect is an organizer, is a systemizer. And through ordering the Ratzon, that's how we start using our Ratzon effectively. Like I give the example, I gave it last week, like we needed to clean out the bomb shelter in our apartment in Israel, in Jerusalem. And it was me against like eight Israeli families. And it was like my Ratzon versus all of them. And I just decide like that. But the question is, how are you going to implement it? Am I just going to start screaming and shouting at everyone? Yeah, that's not going to help. So I had to work out what that's the intellect channeling. I had a very strong Ratzon. I needed the miklat to get the bomb shelter to get emptied. It was full of stuff. I had a very intense Ratzon for that to happen. Now the question is, where's that going to? How am I going to implement that and move that? How am I going to order that so that it will become productive and effective and efficient? And that's called intellect. Okay. The intellect is actually selfless. Your intellect's just like a calculator. Like the idea of 1 + 1 = 2, yeah? That's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. If you vanished tomorrow, 1 + 1 would still equal 2. 1 + 1 = 2 is a objective truth. Your intellect is looking for that. Your intellect is connected to objective truth. It's got nothing to do with you. Intellect is about it, about that, not about me. Now, your love for someone, now if you disappear tomorrow, your love for someone will also disappear tomorrow. Your love is not just about you, it's exclusively about you. But intellect's got nothing to do with you. Intellect's just a machine. It's just a tool that you have, like your phone, like your computer. Yeah, it's just one of your tools. It's not you. The emotions are much more you. We'll talk about it. So now intellect breaks down. Again, we're going to give classes about this as we go on. We'll get this clearer, but just to open up the idea. Intellect breaks down into 3 parts. It's called Chochmah, Bina, and Das. Okay, and that's where the acronym Chabad comes from. As we all know, Chabad. Yeah, that's the Chochmah, Bina, and Das. So the intellect works like this. you basically have a flash of an idea where the entire idea is completely contained. And then there's another part of your brain that kind of unzips and gives length and breadth and depth to that kind of, not generic, how do you say it? Generic, germ-like, it's exactly the muscle, the analogy of how a baby's made. Yeah, the male aspect is this packet of like DNA, like everything's encoded there, and then the female element gives it length and breadth and depth and unfolds it in the process of the womb. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So that's the idea, and it's actually interesting because it's called conception, which is the idea of an idea, to conceive an idea, like to conceive a child. It works in the exact same way, mamash. So the first part of the mind is called chokhmah, which is like the entire idea. Like a good example is I got a friend who's like a property developer. I say, like, imagine he's driving past like this big open like wasteland area, and he stops his car and he gets out and he looks, he's like, and he sees like, you know, the big build. It's just a desert, it's just a desolate wasteland. But within that 1 second, he sees the shopping center and the big buildings and the park and the whole, and he just sees the whole thing in like that. That's the idea, like hit him, bang, wow. Might even have a name to it or something, yeah. But he sees the whole idea; it's very real to him, yeah. But now, what does he do? Now he gets on the phone and he starts calling his team, and he starts getting the architects and the planners and the chule and the whole. And now we have to start giving length and breadth and depth to the idea. We're not talking about now building; it's still the idea. But once he's seen it, now he needs the people to start drawing up the plans and to start getting on with the details on an intellectual level. How many rooms? How much materials? How are we going to do the electricity and the water? And how's it going to work with this? And how's it going to work with that? And what, etc. That's how the mind works. So you get the flash of the idea, and then we extrapolate and we give length and breadth and depth to the idea. That's called chokhmah and bina. Chokhmah is that aspect of the mind that experiences the whole idea in germ form, and then bina is the analytical mind, so to speak, that starts unfolding it and unpacking it and questioning it and analyzing it and comparing and contrasting and the whole thing. And it starts now, that little flash that's going to be gone in a second if you don't do something with it, is now starting to take form. That's exactly the moshel of the man and the woman. The woman gives form and etc. Yeah, the man just gives a genetic code, so to speak. Now, this is the really cool part of the mind. Anyone's into anything right now, like a project, or someone can tell me something that has like
it's a little choppy.
What oh, you can't hear? I can't do it. Is that better? I think my internet, is it better now? You hear? Yes? Can you hear? Okay. Anybody's like, anyone's got a project on right now? Doing a project? No? Anything at work that's like that's like got your mind, or anything?
I'm making Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow night.
Okay. So that's a great idea. You're making Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow night, yeah? So right now, Thanksgiving is right in your mind, yeah? You go out tonight with your husband, yeah? and you go out for a meal, and you're sitting in the restaurant, and you hear the person behind you say Thanksgiving, what happens?
Start thinking about what I have to do.
But you'd probably turn around, it would catch your attention, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the exact same way as if they were to say your name. Depending on how, like, you're probably not so into it, but if you're into like a project at work, I don't know, call it the Windsor project, yeah, you're whatever it is, and you're like into it, yeah, it's completely taking you over, and you're out for dinner with your husband, and you hear somebody next to you say Windsor, it would literally be like they just said Racheli, literally, yeah. What happened? How comes you hear them say the word Windsor, you flip around? If they said something else, you wouldn't have even heard it.
Because it's at the forefront of your mind. So you just pick up on it. It's like the same if you like meet someone new in the neighborhood and then all of a sudden you see them everywhere, but you wouldn't have necessarily seen them before because you didn't know them. It's kind of.
So it's a little that's a little different. That really what's happening here, it's not so much that. It's more that you've become identified with a certain project. It could also be in that sense you've become identified with a certain person as well. It could be that you start seeing them all around or whatever, yeah. But the point is when you put your bina into an idea with a lot of energy, what will eventually start happening is you'll become identified with the idea. And like we said in previous classes, identified means that your sense of self and the idea become enmeshed and entangled with each other. So that's why you would turn around in the same way as if they actually said your name. Because you and that idea have become one. Your sense of self and the idea have started to merge with each other. And if you're really into the idea, then your sense of self and the idea become mamash one with each other. Everyone's with me? And this is what gives birth to emotions. Because we said intellect is completely unemotional. It's got nothing to do with you. It's completely abstract. It's completely objective. It's about that. Once we start extrapolating and understanding and articulating and comparing and contrasting and analyzing, etc., yeah, now we start becoming more and more connected to the idea. It becomes personal. Now there's me. Now the idea has relevance to me. It's not just an idea. It's about me now. And that's what gives birth to emotions. Because like we said, intellect has got no connection to emotion whatsoever. Intellect has got no connection to self. Emotion is completely about self. You say, I love you. It's about me. It's about my love for you. Without me, there isn't my love for you. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 2 is the same for me, for you. And if I'm here, if I'm not here, it's all the same. But my love, yeah, well, it needs me. My fear needs me. Now that we're going to understand emotions in the most simple way. It's so simple because we think of emotions as these crazy complex, things that just like whatever. Yeah, it really is not. Okay, under Alpi, Hasidus, and Kabbalah, emotions boil down to 2. There's only 2 emotions, and they can be mixed with each other. Yeah, but there's only 2 emotions. In Hebrew, it's called Ava and Yira. Ava is always translated as love, and that makes a lot of sense. Yira, we translate a lot of the time as fear. It's fear. It could be a lot of things. You could translate Yira as fear, respect, or even hate. Like it really depends on but this is how we're gonna understand it. Yeah, it's interesting. No one knows this. Yeah, just do a little kiss your finger, and ask yourself what actually is a kiss. So interesting. A kiss, if you actually just kiss your finger, you'll see a kiss is just like a little suck. That's all it is. You like just suck in. Okay. If something repulses you, the immediate, like the inner response, like the instinctual response is like to push away. That's love and fear. That's Ava and Yira. Ava is bringing close, and Yira is pushing away. So simple. That is emotion. Emotion is the energy of attraction or repulsion. I want this or I don't want this. I want more of this. I want to come closer to this. I want to get further from this. You with me? That's all emotion is. Now there's things like joy and anxiety and depression. These are not emotions. We will discuss all of the other things, B'ezrat Hashem, but talking on a very technical level, and I suppose a lot of people wouldn't talk like this, but on a technical level, they were understanding things. Emotion is the movement towards that we call love, or the movement away that we call fear or respect. Now, really what that is now, when we plug the whole thing in, what we've just said, is pleasure becomes manifest as Ratzon, which is just this like ball of energy that's just, yeah. Through the intellect, we now channel down that energy and we masadder it and we form it and we make it usable. And that's the energy that's being expressed through our love and fear. Love and fear is the energy of Ratzon in a manageable package. You with me? Yes, everyone's clear so far? We've got this ethereal, completely disembodied thing called Oineg, which is really the source of who you are, and there's no reason for it, yeah? That's just you. That becomes manifest immediately as Ratzon, which is just will, want, desire. Pardon me, but for what? That's we don't know yet. Then we use our mind, and the mind takes that raw energy and masadder it and orders it and systemizes it until it becomes functional and helpful as either an attraction towards something or a repulsion away from something. Very simple. Now, although you can remember it by emotion, emotion, meaning movement towards or away. Yeah, it's very helpful. Now, what happens when you have strong emotions? What's the next thing that happens?
It's the behavior, the next part.
Exactly. Emotions need to express themselves as a behavior. So there's this picture. Let me just try and find it a second. This is a famous picture. Let me just share my screen. Everyone see this picture of the flowers? You see that? I'm not sure if you're looking at it. Did you see the flowers?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a football ground. This was like in the 80s, I think. There was this like disaster where there was this big crush like near my house, and I think like 150 people died. It was like Havdil, like a Meron thing, but like on a bigger scale. And it like there was a big influx, and they had this perimeter fence, and loads of people got killed. Yeah. Do you see this? This is only a little bit of it. You see, like a few days later, the entire stadium was filled with flowers. The entire stadium filled with flowers. What happened? Everybody just had these crazy strong emotions. They just had to do something. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to open up like a fund for the people's families. I'm sure some people did that. Yeah. But just everyone had to do something. When you have a real emotion, you have to do something. It has to express it. If it doesn't express itself, it will be called a repressed emotion, and it will pop out at some other point, as we all know, in some kind of some other way. That's what behavior is. Behavior is the final manifestation of the whole system. Behavior is thought, speech, and action. Okay, thought is also considered behavior. Speech, obviously, and action. That's by definition. But we're going to look at those three things, and like I said, we're going to spend next week and the week after getting more involved in understanding this, the nuances of it all. But that is how emotions express themselves as behavior. And that's the end of the system. So it goes from that very beginning level, like we said, and the final stage of how the whole thing ends up is as a behavior. Now, this is just very interesting, just the title, when we finish at this point, is that highest level that we spoke about, which we called Oineg and Ratzon. Remember, we spoke about them as one level, Oineg and Ratzon. That's called Kesser. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard that. It's like a very Kabbalistic term. That's called Kesser. Okay, crown. Goes above the head. Yeah, because it's not really in your power. That's working on the system. It's not within the system. You've got power over your seichel, over your intellect, but not really over your ratzon and you can't lose the will to live. Like, your desire to live is not it's not a choice. That's just it is. So it's called crown. It's above the head. The highest level in the system is called Chochmah, which is of the intellect. That's represented by the letter Yud. Okay? The letter above Yud is a Kaf. Kaf represents the word Kesser, crown. Okay? So the letter Kaf represents this highest level of Kesser, which is, we said, Oineg and Ratzon, which are, they're really, like I said, one is the inner part, one is the outer part. They're really together. You can't really have one without the other. Now, this is really, really interesting, is that the word kaf is also, this is kaf yad. The palm of your hand is called a kaf. So this is exactly the whole point, is the whole system is about really the action, what comes out at the end. Your hand represents action. So your hand, being your koyach of the ultimate koyach of action, is really a revelation of that part. You can't even call it a part of you. It's not a part of you. It's the essence of who you are, and it expresses itself through your hand. That's why it's called kaf. That's, by the way, why a handshake is a handshake. Why is a handshake so choshev? Is because it's the coming together of the two essences of the person. That's the word yedid, yad, yedid, means two hands. That's koyach. That's when two people come together. And that's, by the way, when you speak to someone in Hebrew, how do you refer to them second person? Like you'd say, lefanecha, mashlomcha, or mashlomchem, with a chaf. The chaf is the person. Like we said, when you're sitting face to face with someone, you're saying you. You're not saying their name. Why? Because you're communicating with the kesser, the essence of the person, mamash. That's the chaf. And when you shake hands, it's the... So we've just described this whole intricate system, and we've described it on the most basic level you could ever describe it on, yeah? But we gave a good overview, I hope, as Hashem, of the system. But really, you have to see it as an organic whole. We need to know how to work the system, but it's all just one order. And that's the soul. That's what a nefesh is. Like we said, it's an ordered energy. Does that make a little bit more sense to you now? It's an ordered, systemized energy. That's the soul. It starts at Oineg, it becomes manifest as Ratzon, it gets processed through Seichel, through intellect, it gives birth to emotions, and the emotions become enclosed in behavior. That's the soul. Any questions?
Yeah, can I ask something? So when a person is in complete equanimity, like in Hebrew, like a shtavis, that's when they're in touch with their oineg?
Yeah, could be other things as well, maybe, but when you're in touch with oineg, it's not really you're in touch with oineg. That means you've managed to distance yourself from everything else. You are oineg. And if you want to make it really trippy, what's the whole story of Rebbe Akiva? You remember the story of Rebbe Akiva, how he was killed? They stripped away, it says in the Gemara, they stripped away his skin with iron combs, and he was like smiling and laughing. What was that? That's the highest level, when you realize that actual pleasure and pain are actually not different. That's a level that when a person has become so connected to reality, whether we call it pleasure or pain is to do with our take on it. But really, we're just talking about touching the person. And that's why pain, when someone's in pain, they know they're alive. It's a scary thing. But when someone is experiencing pleasure, like, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I don't think he actually said that exactly. But the real statement, the way I understand it, would be to say, I experience pleasure, therefore I am. When you're experiencing pleasure, you know that you really are. And it's the same when you're experiencing pain. You know that you really are. Because it's the same, that's you. That's the you being touched. So equanimity, like what you're saying, Stavus, which everyone is looking for in this generation, really, is when a person becomes connected on this level. There could be other kind of psychological things you could do. When a person becomes so connected to the source of who they are, everything else is just like, it's just stuff. Is it good? Is it bad? Good and bad only begins in the level of intellect. Otherwise, it's so what do you mean it's good, it's bad? It just is. I have to react in this way, I have to react in that way. But good and bad are labels that we impose on it from our intellect. If we're higher up than that, then there is no good and bad. It just is. What's the halacha? That's a good question. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Everyone should be well.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.